This is the Loaded Radio Podcast.
Hey, it's Scott Penfold, and we are back here for another edition of the Loaded Radio Podcast, and great to be back. And a killer show lined up for you this week, man. And I'm not just saying that; it's going to be a heavy one. It's going to be a brutal one. Okay, we're going to be talking a lot about death metal and deathcore, so get ready for that. Joining me on the show this week, I'm going to be talking to the one and only lead guitarist for Suicide Silence. Of course, I'm talking about Mark Heylmun, who's just a ripping player, man. And the band have the new album, Remember You Must Die, which is going to be arriving on March the 10th. Okay, so brand new stuff there from Suicide Silence, and the band's fourth full-length effort with vocalist Hernan Hermida, formerly of All Shall Perish, who joined the band following the passing of frontman Mitch Lucker. So it's going to be great talking with Mark. I'm a huge Suicide Silence fan, so this is going to be awesome. So by all means, stick around for that. If you're listening to us via YouTube, give us a like or a thumbs up, or follow the channel as well to get all the latest content, including the Loaded Radio Podcast notifications. Or if you like, you can download the Loaded Radio app for free and get this podcast. You get all the podcasts right there as well. Get our podcast wherever you get your podcasts, okay? Like, we have the Loaded Radio Podcast, like Spotify, it's on Deezer. I mean, it's on everything. So just go out there and get an Apple Podcast, Google Podcast. So yeah, you're pretty well covered when it comes to this show right here, okay? Also, I do want to talk about ex-Cannibal Corpse, current 6 Feet Under frontman Chris Barnes naming his top 3 death metal albums of all time, which you may find surprising, you may not. We'll be getting into that after I talk with Mark. Chris Barnes has been rather outspoken over the last, I'd say about a year and a half, about his feelings towards modern day death metal, and not really, I guess you could say, not really a big fan of some of the modern day stuff, including the current incarnation of Cannibal Corpse, it seems. I mean, he hasn't come right out and said it, but he kind of has. We'll get into that after I talk with Mark. He is ready to join us right now. It is album number 7 called Remember You Must Die from Riverside, California, deathcore band Suicide Silence. The album drops via Century Media, and we've got the lead guitar player of that band. Dude just shreds, man. He is Mark Heylmun. And Mark, thanks so much for joining us here on the Loaded Radio Podcast this week.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thanks for having me.
The new album, Remember You Must Die. Explain where the title for the new album came from.
Remember You Must Die came from, this whole record had a lot of influence from old Latin poetry that I was translating into English, and then also moving words around and making it sound more and more brutal. Yeah. And Remember You Must Die is inspired by Memento Mori, and we wanted it to sound more brutal and sound way more heavy. And full disclosure, we've always wanted to have a ... in the title, and Justice for All inspired, and finally we got it. So
well, that works out definitely. Now, who produced the album?
Taylor Young produced the album. Yeah, he has a studio called The Pit Recording Studios in Van Nuys, California. Yeah. And The Pit, the slogan of The Pit is home of the perfect palm mute. Taylor's an extremely heavy music producer. He only works with heavy and hardcore bands. And it was a great match, because we knew that we wanted to make a heavy as possible record, and he is a heavy as possible producer.
Now, was this album essentially a product of the pandemic and the time that was really spent, I guess, off the road?
Yes and no. We released a record on Valentine's Day 2020, and then the world shut down like March 8th or something, and we got punched in the gut. And that record that we released, Become the Hunter, got swept under the rug, basically. We never got to tour on it.
Right.
And we did a virtual tour where we played a bunch of live stream shows that were basically specific to different demographics. And at the end of all of that, it ended up being a shit ton of work, more than we ever expected, because we're not TV show producers, and that's basically what we ended up doing, and we're doing something we had never done before. We kind of got burnt. It was the end. It was not even the end of 2020, and we realized, damn, that just took a lot of energy. We're still in the pandemic. We can't tour, and we kind of shut down because we were still kind of bummed the record got swept, and we didn't do anything for the second half of 2020 or even 2021, basically hardly anything. And individually, we all were creating and doing different things, but we didn't really start writing this record until 2022. So we just weren't lack of ideas because of the pandemic and having all of that downtime. But in all reality, it wasn't like we were spending the entire pandemic writing this album.
Right, gotcha. The song Altar of Self, the latest single. What can you tell me about that song in particular?
Altar of Self. So that was originally a song that we all were, except for Garza. Garza loved the song. We all thought that it was probably the weakest song on the entire record, and none of us really liked it. And the way that I'm totally honest, I can't help it, just the way I am. But how it works with us is like, if someone likes something, we want to find out why they like it, or have it be better. Turn it into something that we all like. Like that's how it is. It's like there's something you see in this, so let's make this awesome. Once Taylor came in on that track, we trimmed the fat and made it what that song is now, and made it much more straight to the point, digestible song that has hooks and all of this. And it ended up being one of our favorite songs on the record, all of us. And I think because it was such a collaboration between all of us, and it was something that we didn't necessarily like from the beginning, and it turned out so awesome. It became, every record has a song like this where it's like, that is all of us. That has a little bit of every single one of us in that song. So it becomes something that you kind of hold to your heart a little closer.
Now, another song I wanted to ask you about was the song Dying Life. What can you tell me about that one?
Dying Life was that song and Thinking in Tongues were written before Alex, our old drummer, left the band. Those songs were actually, the Dying Life was a song that we wrote with Alex. It was one of the first songs that was written in this whole entire session, and it was kind of separate from the rest of the songs. That was wrote at the end of 2021 in a short session. And that song kind of it sits on an island on the record. It's kind of it's like this old school death metal kind of thing. And really it's kind of this 3-4-6-8, pirate jig. And it's got a different kind of feel than anything we had ever done before. And it's a Garza song. It's really much more our other guitar player. He wrote that song, and it's a step in a different kind of old school death metal direction that we haven't really done before.
Now, you did mention Alex Lopez. Now, why exactly did Alex Lopez depart the band?
Plain and simple, I think it's just kind of, there's growth, growing in different directions. I think that it became apparent that where most of us were heading creatively, and where our heads were at with what, was good for this band, it was apparent that we were kind of growing in a different direction, and it was kind of a long time coming, so to say. It was kind of needed, and he, since leaving the band, has been a lot happier, which is good, and we're all still super cool with him. And the super positive about it is that Ernie is perfect for the band. I mean, it's like being able to write with him and create almost be able to go in 100% different directions with his drumming has really made for this album to be what I think a standout record that everybody says it sounds like Suicide Silence is back. And it's crazy because it's a completely different drummer backing it, but it sounds like old school Suicide Silence, which I think is a testament to how sick Ernie is.
Now, that actually leads to my next question. Is there a difference in the way that the band writes music today than, say, did 15 years ago when Mitch was still fronting the group?
No. Yeah, it's the exact same, actually. We have the exact same jam room. We've been in the same rehearsal spot. It's more of a recording studio rehearsal spot, but we're an old school band. I mean, we started in a garage, and we're still in that garage, and we still play together. We still write together. We pride ourselves on that. We're a band that we are a live band. We want to write the music live. We want to write it from the place of, this is going to be performed live. It's can do live, and get a recording that sounds like it. It's not, the other way isn't a good way, but there is another way to go about it. I want to make something, and I want to create it sonically, and now I want to recreate that sonically on stage. And we still just go jam and come up with shit and we try to write a song a day. that's really what it is. It's like, if we can't write a song in a day, then maybe not, today's not the day.
No, I get you, man. And you and Chris Garza, I love the dual guitar that you guys have. I mean, it's a really tight dual guitar attack, essentially. And did that really take time to develop, or was that coming kind of like natural for you guys?
Oh, it was a long time. It took us a long time to figure it out. We still are. We try to be good collaborators and try to work with each other. In the beginning, it's kind of difficult because you don't know what's going to work, and sometimes, me included, it's like, I think I know something that I don't know. Like, this is what people are going to like, and then it can happen from the other side. And from one album to the next, you just learn how to. It's almost like, if somebody likes something, I think I already said this, try to figure out why and what it is that they like about it, and help them make it better. For, like, how do I help you make this more what you like? And learning to do that is definitely very difficult, because guitar players, usually they want to write the whole thing, or they want this is my idea and I know what it is. With us, it's like, the rule is, if you don't like it, then come up with something better, or don't say anything at all. Like, if there's something you don't like, you better have a good idea behind it. And that's kind of where we have landed in modern Suicide Silence writing. It's like, if you don't like it, you better have something that's better. And most of the time we all do. If I don't like something, I'll show you the way that I think that it should go. Garza's the same way.
10 years now with Eddie Hermida. Does it still feel like it's kind of a different band than, of course, with Mitch? I mean, obviously it is, but did it take a little time to sort of adjust to Eddie in that front spot now? I mean, now does it feel like it's a warm collective?
Yeah. The biggest difference is that Eddie hasn't always lived near us. So he lives in San Francisco, and we're in Southern California, so it's like about 8 hours away. Right. The biggest difference is that we have to write the music and then get Eddie in the room with us as well, to hear it being performed and to tell him, this is where we're coming from. That's the biggest difference, is just that little bit of distance. But in all reality, we're not complex when it comes down to it. It's simple in the form that, like, this has just got to be brutal. This has got to be fun. It's got to hit where it's supposed to hit. And Eddie, let's say Eddie understands the assignment, like, he knows that if what he needs to do, and he is a technician, man. He can bust so much shit, and he impresses me all the time. And I'd say that, really, if anything, we are still just honing our skills and sharpening, what we're already good at. And I think that this album, this is one more album than even we did with Mitch. Is it? Yeah, we did 3 albums with Mitch. This is Eddie's 4th record. So we try to collaborate and bring out the best in each other. And Eddie's no different. He brings out better in us, and we bring out better in him.
Now, I've always wanted to ask this, as being as a fan of the band too. I really got into you guys when Mitch was fronting the band. But after the passing of Mitch, was there a time where you guys actually considered no longer continuing? Or, I mean, it must have been a very difficult time for you guys. Yeah,
we didn't know what we were going to do. We basically just met up once a month. When all that happened, we all kind of were going through our processes, but we made sure that, once a month we met up at the Buffalo Wild Wings that we used to always have band meetings at, where the YOLO video was thought of. And there's a lot of history at that Buffalo Wild Wings. We would just go there once a month and check up on everybody as a whole, and kind of have a little band meeting. And it took until March of 2013, and Mitch passed in 2012, November 1st. So we were just meeting up once a month, checking in, and by March, everybody had made the decision that, we should keep going with the band. And I was the person that said, if I had some inside information that All Shall Perish was kind of falling apart, and that the band was potentially not going to be touring anymore, and that's why I said, I was like, if Eddie could do it, I think he'd be perfect for the job, because we have the background with him. We're friends. He's amazing, and we just knew he would fit, and that's really how it happened.
2017 SelfTitled album, it was a pretty vast departure from what bands would expect from Suicide Silence. What exactly happened there? Was it a conscious decision to go that route?
Yeah, so we were following, and this is something I just recently started kind of discussing, because it didn't really make sense to talk about back then. We were following the Pantera and Metallica album footprint, and mainly Metallica. And Metallica's fifth album was the Black Album, and they made a big departure and change, and they rolled the dice and did something way different. And we said around 2009, when we were writing No Time to Bleed or finishing it, we said, if we make it to the fifth album, if we make it to our Black Album, we're going to do a self-titled, and we're going to do something way different. We didn't know what that was. We didn't know what that meant. But it was kind of this planned thing that we knew we were going to do. And even more story to that, we wanted Ross Robinson to produce our first record, and he was not in our budget and he wasn't going to do that record. So it didn't happen. But by the time we got to the fifth album, Ross was available. Ross was into it. Ross became a friend of ours. And if anybody knows Ross Robinson is he loves to make a Ross Robinson album, and we were in this perfect place. Fifth album, let's do something super unsafe and risky and out there, and it was almost like a perfect storm, really. But yeah, that's pretty much what happened there. Is like we knew we wanted to do something super wild, and we just went for it and we did it.
Now, was Become the Hunter a response to fan reaction of that album?
No, I would say that Become the Hunter was, I feel like it's always easy to look at what you did and be proud of what you did, but also realize that there's these particular kind of weapons, let's call them, in your arsenal that you are super good at doing. And we've always felt like we needed to appease fans, and we needed to make a certain style of music for it to work, and we needed to throw out the rule book and make an album like the self-titled album to fully have the fire and the honesty to make an album that maybe sounds more like us. Because if we would have just kept making the same album over and over and over again, I feel like we wouldn't have been being honest with it as much. So we needed to make an honest departure record to re-establish how much we love making excruciatingly visceral, I guess what people would consider a standard kind of deathcore sound.
For someone who's just getting into Suicide Silence, what 3 songs would you recommend that really encapsulates the band as you understand it?
I would say Unanswered. I would say YOLO. And then I would say off the new record, I would probably go with Fucked for Life.
And what would you go with those 3?
Unanswered is a style of song that we kind of can just, for lack of a better term, shit out. And it's the way we sound. And we can write these songs that are like, You Must Die is one of those songs. It's our like kind of unanswered type song. And it's just, we don't even have a name for it. It's just one of those songs. It's just this boom. We can write those songs so easy. Fucked for Life is I call them like positively negative songs. It sounds like it would be something that is extremely negative, but there's a positive lyrical context to it. And we have a ton of that throughout our catalog. And that's right now, I think that Fucked for Life is like Suicide Silence 2023. It's like it's the new shit. And I skipped over You Only Live Once. You Only Live Once it's a banger. We would call it a banger, like a song that's specifically catered to killing it live and something that's super memorable and hooky.
Awesome, man. Now, what do you got coming up the days ahead then? Obviously, you're going to be hitting the road for some touring, obviously.
Yeah, we hit the road. Chaos and Carnage. We're on tour with Dying Fetus and Born of Osiris and Aborted and a bunch of different bands. And that's all of April. And yeah, we're going to be crushing it, man. I mean, we're a live band. We love to play live. We're what we do as individuals and playing. That's all we're trying to recreate with an album. And right now everything's heating up. Like this album it's a great example of what we really sound like. And we can't wait to get out on the road and play these songs.
Yeah, that's going to be a brutal tour, man. I can't wait for that. That's going to be so great.
It's going to be insane. It's going to be literally insane.
Mark, thanks so much for your time, man. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the road, man. Really looking forward to this tour. There he is. There's Mark Heylmun from Suicide Silence. And
Later.
yeah, the name of the new album is Remember You Must Die. Drops March the 10th. And yeah, man, straight up brutality. Courtesy of a band who really are one of the handful to really put deathcore on the map. You know, this band been around since 2002. Mark as well being in the band since 2005. I mean, him and Garza pretty much have the longest time within Suicide Silence. But hey, how you doing? It's Scott Penfold here with you on the Loaded Radio podcast. And I was mentioning before we started talking to Mark about ex-Cannibal Corpse, current 6 Feet Under frontman Chris Barnes. You know, recently naming his top 3 death metal albums. He made an appearance on Jonathan Montenegro's My 3 Questions 2 podcast. And I guess he was asked to name his top 3 death metal albums of all time. Now, Chris responded the following way. Well, on that, I'm going to have to say Possessed 7 Churches. I'm going to have to go with Death, Leprosy, and Spiritual Healing, and Scream Bloody Gore. He put all 3 sort of, I guess, as one album. And he says, I'm going to have to wrap those 3 up because Chuck Schuldiner, late Death frontman, of course, rather Death main man, who was just so influential and essentially created the era that was death metal, was a good friend of mine, and I was a huge fan of Death early on, so rest in peace, Chuck. And I'm also going to go with the third one, I'm going to have to say, Obituary, Slowly We Rot, a huge album, and he certainly is right there. Now, Chris continued, all 3 of those bands are similar type of death metal. Of course, Possessed is the kings of death metal. They pretty much started it all. Jeff Becerra, fucking awesome guy, man. So that's where I come from, man. I really loved all those albums. And if I have to throw a 4th one in there, I'm going to have to say Cannibal Corpse's Butchered at Birth. Kind of a pat myself on the back. That was a huge album in death metal as far as kind of what our twist on the whole thing, and I think it influenced a lot of people, just as Possessed influenced a lot of bands to move in a certain direction. So there you go, 3 classic, I mean, was it 3? Well, 3, 4, 5, 6, I mean, there's kind of 6 there, but essentially, his top 3 death metal albums of all time, all classic bands, of course, because, I mean, Chris made headlines for, but it's a little over a year ago, for saying that modern death metal vocals make him physically ill, and that he despises what this genre has become. Remember that? Now, the comments came after Barnes said that he watched a death metal roundtable discussion on notfest.com, which featured George Corpse Grinder Fisher, who was the current vocalist of Cannibal Corpse. He took over after Chris vacated the band after the Bleeding album. Trevor Sternad, the late Trevor Sternad from the Black Dahlia Murder, Chase Mason from Gatecreeper, and as well Alex Jones of Undeath. And the 4 frontmen discussed their early influences, you know, the accessibility of death metal and their inspiration from strange places, you know, live shows between the song pattern, all that kind of stuff that they love so much about death metal. Now, Barnes went on to tweet, I just watched a death metal podcast on YouTube that was done about a week ago with the top death metal vocalists. It made me physically ill. I despise what this genre has become. And soon after, Hatebreed singer Jamie Jasta, who hosts the Jasta Show, and who actually co-produced George Corpse Grinder Fisher's debut solo album, must be noted there, replied, come on the podcast and discuss. Chris said, no thanks, brother. I have no need to jump on that bandwagon. You guys got that. To which Jasta fired back, weak. And then Barnes said, ain't here to play that game. You have fun though, bro. Jasta then wrote, you're the one playing games. You hate what the genre has become. But do you ever promote or discuss new bands or try to help build anything in the genre? Chris then responded, LOL, promote, LOL, ha 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 ha. And then Jasta then countered, oh right, that's beneath you. To which Barnes said, nah, I'm just not a shill. Now he also added to his statement, assuring everyone that he does indeed hate modern death metal vocals, the death metal scene, and just about everyone else in existence. Chris posted on his Twitter or social media on February the 4th of 2022, I stand by my original statement. I despise what this genre has become. All the people trolling me proves my point. All the bitch-ass media making headlines off it proves my point. Fuck y'all to hell. Eat a dick on the way down. So, yeah. Chris has been he's been a guy that's been known to voice his opinion on a few things, you know what I mean, in such matters. So, I mean, take it from that way you want. I'm not going to sit here on the podcast and just bash Barnes. I'm not going to do that. I mean, I love the stuff he did with Corpse. I love Eaten Back to Life. I love Butchered at Birth. I love Tomb of the Mutilated. And I love The Bleeding. Those first 4 Cannibal Corpse albums with Chris Barnes are phenomenal records, man. They're just awesome. Now, a lot of people obviously prefer George Corpse Grinder Fisher. I am one of those people. I prefer George in that front spot with the band. But that doesn't take away the coolness and the absolute brutality and the importance that Chris Barnes had during those first few albums, like in those early years, man, from 1990 through 1995. And I've heard about it some shows, where some crowd members will, start chanting that Chris Barnes sucks or whatever. And Corpse Grinder doesn't get exactly direct with it, but he kind of plays into it a little bit, you know what I mean? But to come out there and just slam modern day death metal, it comes off sort of, get off my lawn-ish, if you know what I mean, right? And granted, those albums that Chris Barnes chose for his top 3 death metal albums of all time, they're great albums. They're killer albums, especially the Death. I mean, Possessed, you can't go wrong with, and Obituary. But death metal as a genre has evolved, man. It's even evolved into its own special subgenres there, too. I mean, there's blackened death metal, there's deathcore, there's, you know what I mean? To categorize all the new stuff and just say it all sucks and I hate everybody and all the vocalists, they all suck. I mean, that's kind of a broad statement, Mind you, this guy's like death metal royalty, if you want to look at it that way. He was there at the beginning. He was one of those guys. Like, his vocals are brutal, man. He still has great brutal vocals he does with 6 Feet Under. I love 6 Feet Under, too. I think they're phenomenal. Which as well features former Cannibal Corpse guitarist Jack Owen. I spoke with him previously on the Loaded Radio podcast. An absolutely awesome guy. Very, very cool, very, very chill sort of guy as well. I've spoke to Alex Webster on the podcast, too, who's currently still with Cannibal Corpse, founding member of the band, of course. And the thing is with death metal is, like, these guys, the music is so brutal and kind of scary, but when you meet these guys, they're the friendliest, chillest dudes you'll ever meet. I mean, well, maybe save for Chris, but I mean, Chris is a great guy too, though. Corpse Grinder, when I met him, he was one of the greatest guys ever. Alex Webster, so well-spoken, so cool. Jack Owen, very timid, very chill, you know what I mean? Ones you got to look out for are the pop stars of the modern day, man. Don't have to worry about people in death metal bands, that's for sure, man. But there you go. I mean, think what you want about Chris Barnes. We all get ornery sometimes. He's got his opinion, and you know what? He named some incredibly classic death metal albums there for his top death metal albums of all time. For me, I would certainly put Death's Leprosy in there. Autopsy's Mental Funeral would have to be in there as well. And probably Cannibal Corpse. I would probably have to go with probably Tomb of the Mutilated, man, or The Bleeding. But there's just so many great death metal bands out there. So many great death metal albums out there, man. I mean, the list is endless. You can check out the list of the top 13 death metal bands of all time as voted by you. That's currently up at loadedradio.com right now in the top 13 section. And a great countdown of artists there, which we put out to votes, man. I mean, so you can't bitch about it because we put it out there for you to vote on. The list is solid. It makes complete sense. So again, you can check that out at loadedradio.com. As always, don't forget, check out loadedradio.com for all your hard rock and metal news updated on a daily basis as well. The 24-hour radio station, it's going on there too, and past editions of this podcast, past episodes of this podcast. You download the Loaded Radio app. It's completely free to get all that stuff to your mobile device. I'm Scott Penfold, and we'll talk to you again next week for an all-new edition of the Loaded Radio podcast.
Loaded Radio.